Imagine you are standing in a room full of people who are all striving for success. Some play fair, some work hard, and some simply exist, waiting for the world to give them what they think they deserve. Yet look at history. Look at the emperors, the artists, the disruptors. It is often the ruthless, the decisive, and the terrifyingly bold who climb the highest. This forces us to confront a brutal question that most of us are too afraid to ask. Is the world rigged in favor of the worst among us, or have we simply misunderstood the fundamental engine of human potential? We are told from childhood that comfort is the goal. We are told to seek safety, to avoid stress, and to minimize suffering. But what if I told you that this pursuit of comfort is actually a disease? What if the very things you are running from, pain, chaos, and struggle, are the only things that can actually save you? Friedrich Nietzsche, perhaps the most dangerous and misunderstood philosopher of the last 2 centuries, predicted exactly where we are today. He saw a world where we would kill our gods and replace them with nothing but a desperate need for comfort. He called the result the last man, a creature who no longer aspires, who blinks and says, "We have invented happiness," while slowly rotting from the inside. But Nietzsche didn't just diagnose the sickness, he gave us the cure. He called it the will to power. This is not a political manifesto, it is a psychological necessity. It is the instinct for growth, for durability, for the accumulation of forces. And today, we are going to prove Nietzsche right, not just with philosophy, but with the hard science of your brain. We are going to dismantle the idea that your abilities are fixed, and we are going to show you how to metabolize suffering into genius. If you are ready to stop apologizing for your ambition and want to understand the psychological code that governs human greatness, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. We are building a community of people who refuse to be the last man. Click that button and let's begin the ascent. To understand how to unleash your potential, we first have to understand why you feel stuck. Why does modern life, despite all its technological comforts, often feel so empty? Nietzsche stands at the crossroads of the most significant shift in Western history. He famously declared, "God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him." Now, people often misinterpret this. They think Nietzsche was celebrating. He wasn't. He was terrified. Here's the full context that changes everything. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives? Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods, simply to appear worthy of it? Do you hear the terror in those words? He wasn't just talking about a deity in the sky. He was talking about the collapse of the supreme value structure that held civilization together. For over 1,000 years, Western civilization had organized itself around Christian values, around the idea that there was an objective moral order inscribed into the fabric of reality by a divine creator. When that structure collapses, it leaves a massive empty crater, and into that crater flows the most dangerous force of all, nihilism, the belief that nothing matters. Think about what this means practically. If there is no God, there is no divine purpose to your life. If there is no afterlife, there is no ultimate justice. The murderer and the saint both end up as dust. The person who sacrifices everything for others and the person who tapes everything for themselves, they both face the same oblivion. So why be good? Why struggle? Why try? This is the abyss Nietzsche saw opening up beneath Western civilization. Nietzsche warned us that without a higher purpose, humanity would devolve. We would slide into a state of pessimism, believing that life is just suffering with no meaning. And look around you. Is that not what we see? The statistics are staggering. Depression rates have tripled in the last 30 years. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 29. Despite having more material wealth, more entertainment options, and more comfort than any generation in human history, we are profoundly unhappy. We see people obsessed with numbing themselves through screens, through substances, through endless, mindless entertainment. We see the rise of what psychologists call deaths of despair, overdoses, alcoholism, suicide. These are not the deaths of people who lack resources. These are the deaths of people who lack meaning. Nietzsche predicted the rise of the last man. The last man is the individual who has abandoned the hard work of self-overcoming. He wants warmth. He wants to be equal to everyone else because equality feels safe. He says, formerly all the world was insane, and he blinks. He is the person who avoids risk, avoids pain, and seeks only to preserve his own comfort. He's the product of an exhausted age. You might recognize this in your own life, that voice in your head that says, why try so hard? Why take the risk? Just stay here where it's safe. You've got a decent job, a comfortable apartment, your streaming services. Why rock the boat? That is the voice of the last man. And Nietzsche despised this. He saw it as a betrayal of life itself. He believed that life is not about preservation, it is about overcoming. He wrote, "What is happiness? The feeling that power increases, that a resistance is overcome." Notice he didn't say happiness is the absence of pain. He said it is the overcoming of resistance. If you remove the resistance, you remove the happiness, you remove the growth. This is profoundly counterintuitive to how we've been raised. We've been taught that happiness is a hot bath, a good meal, a vacation. These things are pleasures, yes, but Nietzsche distinguishes between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is passive, it is consumption. Happiness is active, it is creation, conquest, growth. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. I'm willing to bet it wasn't when you were lying on a beach doing nothing. It was probably when you were struggling with something difficult, training for a race, building a business, learning a new skill, fighting for a cause you believed in. It was when you were pushing against resistance and feeling yourself grow stronger. This is where the crisis hits home. We have organized our entire society to remove resistance. We have painkillers for every ache, algorithms to curate our boredom, and social safety nets to catch us when we fall. We have on-demand everything. Food delivered to your door, entertainment streamed to your screen, even relationships can be swiped into existence with minimal effort.
And yet, mental health statistics suggest we are more miserable than ever. Why? Because we have denied the will to power. We have denied the fundamental drive that demands we struggle against something and win. We are standing on the edge of that abyss Nietzsche warned us about. The old values are gone. The old path of religious certainty has crumbled. We can't go back to naive faith. We can't pretend we don't know what we know about evolution, about the vastness of the universe, about the randomness of existence. We are left with a choice. Do we slide into the apathy of the last man, or do we forge a new path? Nietzsche's life work was an attempt to forge a third path, away from religious dogma, but also away from nihilism. He challenges us to become the architects of our own values. But this is terrifying. It requires us to accept that there is no objective truth waiting to be discovered. There are only interpretations. It requires us to stare into the face of a chaotic universe and say, I will create meaning here. This is the foundation. You are not suffering because life is hard. You are suffering because you have been taught that life shouldn't be hard. You have been infected by the morality of the last man. To break free, we must understand the engine that drives all life. We must understand the will to power. So what is this will to power? It is one of the most abused and misused terms in history. The Nazis tried to appropriate it. Politicians use it to justify tyranny. Social Darwinists use it to justify exploitation. But they are all wrong. Nietzsche is not talking about the petty desire to rule over other people. In fact, he viewed the desire to control others as a sign of weakness, a compensation for those who cannot control themselves. He wrote, "I assess the power of a will by how much resistance, pain, torture it endures and knows how to turn to its advantage." Let me be crystal clear, because this is where people dangerously misread Nietzsche. The will to power is never justification for cruelty, exploitation, or domination of others. That's a perversion Nietzsche himself would despise. True power, according to Nietzsche, is power over yourself. It is the discipline to be dangerous but choose to be peaceful. It is the strength to destroy, but the wisdom to create instead. Anyone who uses Nietzsche to justify harming others has fundamentally misunderstood him. Consider the difference between a tyrant and a master. A tyrant needs others to be weak so he can feel strong. His power is parasitic. He derives his sense of self from dominating those beneath him. If you remove the slaves, the tyrant is nothing. This is not power. This is profound weakness disguised as strength. A master, in Nietzsche's sense, doesn't need anyone to be beneath him. His power comes from within. He has mastered himself, his passions, his fears, his base instincts. He is strong enough to be kind, disciplined enough to be generous, secure enough to lift others up. Nietzsche proposed that the world, including every human being, operates off this insatiable desire to manifest power. He wrote, "The world is will to power and nothing besides." Now, scholars still debate whether Nietzsche meant this as a metaphysical principle, that the entire universe is made of power dynamics, or a psychological principle about human nature. Some read Nietzsche as saying that literally everything, from atoms to galaxies, is fundamentally about power relations. Others see it as specifically about human psychology and biology. For our purposes, what matters is how it operates in your psychology, how it shows up in your daily life. Think of the athlete pushing their body to the limit. Why does someone wake up at 5 in the morning to run in the freezing cold? Why do they push through the pain, the exhaustion, the voice that says stop? It's not for money. Most athletes never go pro. It's not for fame. Most people will never know their name. It is the will to power. It is the drive to see how far they can push themselves, to overcome their previous limits, to become stronger than they were yesterday. Think of the artist obsessing over a detail until it is perfect. Why does someone spend hours on a single brushstroke that most people won't even notice? Why do they tear up a canvas they've worked on for weeks because it's not quite right? It is the will to power. It is the drive to impose their vision on reality, to create something that didn't exist before, to manifest their inner world in the outer world. Think of the scientist spending sleepless nights solving a problem. Why does someone dedicate their life to understanding something that has no immediate practical application? Why do they sacrifice comfort, wealth, social status to pursue knowledge? It is the will to power. It is the biological imperative to grow, to expand, and to assert your reality upon the world. When this will is lacking, there is decline. It's that simple. If you are not growing, you are dying. There is no stasis in nature. Show me something that has stopped growing, and I will show you something that is beginning to decay. Think about relationships. The relationship that has stopped growing is the relationship that is dying. The moment you and your partner stop challenging each other, stop pushing each other to grow, the relationship begins its slow death. You might stay together for years out of habit, out of fear, out of convenience, but the vitality is gone. Think about careers. The career that has plateaued is the career that is dying. The moment you stop learning, stop taking on new challenges, stop expanding your capabilities, you become obsolete. You might coast for years on past achievements, but you are living on borrowed time. This is true psychologically, physically, spiritually. The muscle that is not challenged atrophies. The skill that is not practiced deteriorates. The relationship that is not cultivated withers. The mind that is not stimulated dulls.
Let's bridge this to modern science, because Nietzsche was effectively a psychologist before psychology had a name. What Nietzsche calls the will to power, modern psychology calls a growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford University spent decades researching achievement and success. She discovered that there are two fundamental mindsets that shape how people approach challenges. The fixed mindset believes that your qualities are carved in stone. You're either smart or you're not. You're talented or you're not. You're athletic or you're not. People with a fixed mindset believe that ability is innate and unchangeable. What happens when someone with a fixed mindset encounters difficulty? They interpret it as evidence of their lack of ability. If math is hard for them, it means they're not a math person. If public speaking is scary, it means they're not a natural speaker. Failure is devastating because it reveals their fundamental inadequacy. So what do people with a fixed mindset do? They avoid challenges. They stick to what they're already good at. They cheat rather than study more. They look for people who did worse than them to feel better about themselves. They need to constantly prove their worth because their worth feels fragile and under threat. This is the psychology of the last man. This is what Nietzsche saw everywhere around him, people who had given up on growth, who were desperately trying to protect the small amount of power they had. Then there is the growth mindset. These people believe that their basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Intelligence can be cultivated, talent can be built, skills can be learned. When someone with a growth mindset encounters difficulty, they interpret it differently. If math is hard for them, it means they need to practice more. If public speaking is scary, it means they need more experience. Failure is information. It shows them where they need to focus their efforts. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges. They seek out difficulty because they know that's where growth happens. When they fail, they don't say, "I am a failure." They say, "I haven't mastered this yet." Dweck's research showed that these mindsets are incredibly predictive of success. When she tracked students over years, she found that growth mindset students dramatically outperformed fixed mindset students, even when the fixed mindset students had higher initial ability. Here's what's fascinating. Nietzsche and Dweck are saying the exact same thing, separated by over a century. Nietzsche tells us that the meaninglessness of suffering, not suffering itself, was the curse that lay over mankind. What does this mean? It means that humans can endure almost any amount of suffering if they believe it has meaning. Viktor Frankl proved this in the concentration camps. The prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who found meaning in their suffering, who saw it as a test to overcome, a story to tell, a mission to complete. Dweck tells us that if you view effort as a sign of weakness, that you only have to try hard because you aren't a natural, you will crumble. But if you view effort as the path to mastery, if you find meaning in the struggle itself, you become anti-fragile. But this goes even deeper than psychology. This goes into our physiology, into the very cells of our body. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford, and Dr. Alia Crum, a psychologist also at Stanford, have conducted groundbreaking research on how our beliefs about stress actually change how our bodies process it. In the standard view, stress is universally bad. It damages your health, it impairs your thinking, it shortens your life. So we should minimize stress, right? But Crum discovered something remarkable. She ran studies where she showed people videos about stress. One group watched videos explaining how stress is debilitating and harmful. The other group watched videos explaining how stress is enhancing and helpful, how it sharpens your focus, mobilizes your energy, and helps you rise to challenges. Then she tracked their physiological responses to stressful situations. And here's what she found. The people who believed stress was debilitating showed all the negative effects we associate with stress. Their cortisol spiked,
their blood vessels constricted, their cognitive performance declined, their immune function suppressed. But the people who believed stress was enhancing showed a completely different physiological profile. Their cortisol response was modulated, their blood vessels dilated, improving blood flow to the brain and muscles. Their cognitive performance improved, their immune function maintained. Same stressor, different belief, completely different biological response.
Huberman has shown similar effects with growth mindset. When people believe that stress and difficulty are making them stronger, their brain actually releases different neurochemicals. They get a boost in dopamine and norepinephrine, chemicals associated with focus, motivation, and learning. Their hippocampus shows increased neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections. This is the biological proof of the will to power. Your body is literally designed to reward you for leaning into the struggle. When you interpret challenge as opportunity, when you see resistance as the raw material for growth, your biology shifts to support that interpretation. Nietzsche wrote, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." For over a century, people thought this was just a nice metaphor, but science now tells us this is literally true if your mindset is aligned with that belief. This is called stress-related growth, or post-traumatic growth in modern psychology. Researchers have found that people who go through severe trauma, cancer, combat, natural disasters, loss of loved ones, often report that the experience made them stronger, not despite the trauma, but because of it. They develop deeper relationships, they clarify their values, they develop new strengths and capabilities, they gain a new appreciation for life, they discover inner resources they didn't know they had. But here's the key. This only happens when people actively engage with the trauma, when they search for meaning in it, when they use it as fuel for growth. People who passively experience trauma, who see themselves only as victims, who remain stuck in resentment, they don't grow, they decay. So, the will to power is not just a philosophical concept, it is a biological switch. It is the decision to interpret resistance as fuel. It is the refusal to be a victim of your circumstances. Nietzsche argues that weakness leads to corruption and evil, while only strength promotes nobility and goodness. This is controversial, but think about it carefully. Why does weakness lead to corruption? Because when you are weak, when you feel powerless, you become resentful. You become the person who tears others down because you cannot build yourself up. You become the person who seeks equality not because you believe in justice, but because you cannot bear to see others rise above you. Nietzsche observed this pattern everywhere in human behavior. The weak person doesn't say, "I am weak and I need to get stronger." That would require facing a painful truth and doing hard work. Instead, the weak person says, "Strength itself is evil. The strong are oppressors. My weakness is actually moral purity." This is what Nietzsche called slave morality, but we'll get deeper into that later. For now, understand this. True morality, true kindness, requires the power to be dangerous, but the discipline to be peaceful. Think about forgiveness. True forgiveness is only possible when you have the power to take revenge, but choose not to. If you're powerless to retaliate, if someone has harmed you and you simply lack the ability to harm them back, then saying, "I forgive you" is empty. You had no other option. That's not forgiveness, that's impotence dressed up as virtue. But when you have the power to destroy someone who wronged you, you have the resources, the connections, the evidence, and you choose to forgive instead, that's real forgiveness. That's real virtue, because it was a choice, not a necessity. The same is true for kindness, generosity, compassion. These are only virtues when they come from strength. When they come from weakness, they're often just disguised self-interest or manipulation. We have the diagnosis, nihilism. We have the engine, will to power. Now we need the roadmap. How do you actually transition from a passive observer of life to the master of your own destiny? How do you move from understanding these concepts intellectually to embodying them in your daily existence?
In his masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where Nietzsche creates a fictional prophet who descends from mountain solitude after 10 years to teach humanity, he describes 3 transformations of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. This is not a linear progression that happens once. It is a cycle we must repeat throughout our lives. You will go through these metamorphoses multiple times. Every time you level up, every time you face a new challenge, every time you reach a new tier of existence. Understanding this is crucial. Too many people think they transform once and they're done. They have their awakening, their rebellion, their breakthrough, and then they expect to coast. But growth is cyclical. You will be the camel many times, you will be the lion many times, and if you're fortunate and disciplined, you will be the child many times. The camel is the beast of burden. It kneels down and asks, "What is heaviest? Let me take it upon myself." The camel represents the stage of learning, discipline, and endurance. It is the part of you that accepts the weight of tradition, of society, of what Nietzsche calls the dragon. In Nietzsche's allegory, the dragon is covered in golden scales, and on every scale is written, "Thou shalt." This is societal conditioning. It is your parents telling you to get a safe job. It is the culture telling you to be polite and fit in. It is the school system teaching you to sit still and follow instructions. It is the corporate world demanding you dress appropriately and respect hierarchy. It is the collective weight of expectations from family, from society, from history. And here's what people miss. You cannot skip the camel stage. You must first bear the weight. You must learn the rules before you can break them intelligently. You must develop the discipline to carry the load through the lonely desert. If you try to be a rebel without first being a camel, you are just a child throwing a tantrum. You have no substance, you have no skills, you have no discipline. You're not breaking the rules from a position of mastery, you're just being incompetent and calling it freedom.
Think about great artists. Picasso spent years mastering classical painting techniques before he developed Cubism. He could draw and paint like the old masters. His rebellion was informed by deep knowledge of what he was rebelling against. That's very different from someone who paints poorly and claims they're being avant-garde. Think about great scientists. Einstein mastered Newtonian physics before developing relativity. He understood the system deeply before he revolutionized it. Think about great entrepreneurs. Steve Jobs worked at Atari and studied calligraphy and immersed himself in the existing technology before he revolutionized personal computing. Jeff Bezos worked at a hedge fund and understood traditional retail before creating Amazon. The pattern is always the same. Master the existing system, then transcend it. Be the camel, then become the lion. Let me give you a personal example of what the camel stage looks like. Imagine you're a young person starting your career. You take an entry-level job at a corporation. It's boring, the work isn't meaningful, the hierarchy is stifling. You have to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, follow protocols that seem arbitrary. Every part of you wants to rebel. You want to tell them this is all nonsense. You want to quit and do your own thing. But if you're wise, you stay. You be the camel. You carry the burden, you learn the skills, you develop discipline. You understand how organizations work, how projects get funded, how decisions get made, how politics play out in professional settings. You learn to manage your time, to communicate effectively, to work with difficult people, to deliver results under pressure. You build your professional network. You develop expertise in your field. This is not wasted time. This is not selling out. This is building the foundation that will allow you to actually rebel effectively later. Because when you eventually leave to start your own company or pursue your own path, you're not starting from zero. You're starting with skills, with knowledge, with a network, with discipline. Your rebellion is informed. Your freedom is earned. Compare this to someone who refuses to be the camel. They jump from job to job, never staying long enough to master anything. They dismiss every workplace as corporate BS without ever understanding how organizations function. They want freedom without discipline, rebellion without mastery. They end up stuck in perpetual adolescence, broke and bitter, blaming the system for their lack of success, when really they just never developed the capabilities necessary to create something valuable. The camel phase is necessary. This is when you develop your basic skills, your work ethic, your discipline. This is when you learn your craft. This is when you build your foundation. But here's the paradox that destroys most people. The camel stage is necessary, but staying there too long will kill you. And this is where most people get trapped. They spend so long being the camel that they forget they were supposed to eventually become something else. They get comfortable with the burden. They start to identify with it. They mistake obedience for virtue, conformity for wisdom. I see this everywhere. People who spend 20, 30, 40 years in careers they hate because it's the responsible thing to do. People who maintain relationships that drain them because you can't just quit when things get hard. People who live their parents' dreams instead of their own because they sacrificed so much for me.
These are not noble sacrifices. These are wasted lives. These are people who never made it past the camel stage. Most people never leave the camel stage. They spend their entire lives carrying burdens that others have placed on them. They work jobs they hate because that's what's expected. They pursue careers their parents wanted. They live in cities they don't like because that's where the opportunities are. They maintain relationships that drain them because they're afraid of being alone. They are the camel, wandering in the desert, getting heavier and heavier, slower and slower, until finally they collapse under the weight and die, never having lived their own life. This is the tragedy Nietzsche saw everywhere. People sleepwalking through their own existence, carrying burdens they never chose, following scripts they never questioned, dying without ever having truly lived. Eventually, if you're fortunate, something breaks. The burden becomes too heavy, the loneliness becomes too acute, the desert becomes too vast. Eventually, the camel wanders so far into the desert that it becomes lonely. It realizes that the burden is crushing it. It realizes that the thou shouts are not its own. It realizes it has been carrying someone else's values, someone else's dreams, someone else's expectations. Maybe it's a health scare that makes you realize you've been wasting your life. Maybe it's a midlife crisis where you look at your achievements and feel empty. Maybe it's a breakdown that forces you to confront how miserable you've been. Whatever the trigger, something shifts. The camel begins to question, and in that questioning, transformation becomes possible. Here, the spirit transforms into the lion. The lion seeks freedom. Its goal is to slay the dragon. When the dragon says, "Thou shalt," the lion roars back, "I will." This is the stage of rebellion. It is the rejection of imposed values. It is the moment you look at your life, your career, your relationships, and realize you have been living someone else's script. This is often triggered by crisis. Maybe you have a health scare and realize you've been wasting your life. Maybe you get fired and realize you hated that job anyway. Maybe your relationship ends and you realize you've been performing a role rather than being yourself. Maybe you have a child and realize you want to model authentic living, not conformity. The lion fights for the sacred no. It destroys the old idols. This is a violent, chaotic phase. It is often accompanied by isolation because the people who benefited from you being a camel don't want you to be a lion. Your parents might be upset that you're not pursuing the career they wanted for you. Your friends might be uncomfortable that you're changing and growing. Your colleagues might resent that you're no longer playing the corporate game. Your partner might feel threatened that you're becoming more independent and authentic. Nietzsche himself went through this when he left the academic world, broke with his mentor Richard Wagner, ended his friendship with Paul Ricoeur, and wandered the Swiss and Italian Alps alone, writing "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" in a creative frenzy. The lion phase is necessary, but it is not the end. The lion can create freedom, but it cannot yet create new values. It is defined by what it is fighting against, not what it is fighting for. Many people get stuck in the lion phase. They spend their entire lives fighting. They define themselves by what they oppose: capitalism, patriarchy, religion, authority, whatever. Their entire identity is constructed around rebellion.
But pure rebellion is exhausting and ultimately empty. If you spend your whole life saying no, what have you built? You've torn down the old structures, but you haven't created anything new. You're free from the dragon, but you're lost in the desert with no direction. I want you to pause and ask yourself right now, which phase are you in? Are you the camel carrying a load that isn't yours? Are you the lion fighting for your freedom but feeling lost in the chaos? Or have you become the child? Leave a comment below telling me about one thou shalt you're carrying that isn't yours. What would the lion roar about in your life? I'll respond to as many as I can, because this is where the real transformation happens, when you name the burden. This is the final and most difficult metamorphosis. Why must the praying lion become the child? Because the child is innocence and forgetting. It is a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a sacred yes. The camel says yes to the old duty out of obedience. The lion says no to the old duty out of rebellion. The child says yes to life out of joy. The child plays. The child creates for the sheer joy of creating, not to prove a point, not to fight an enemy, but because it is their nature. This is the state of the Ubermensch, the overman, the person who has overcome themselves. To be the child is to achieve a state of what psychologists now call flow. This is when you're so absorbed in an activity that time disappears. You're not doing it for money, for status, for validation. You're doing it because the activity itself is rewarding. It's the artist lost in the painting where hours pass and they don't notice. The entrepreneur building a vision, not for the money, but because they're possessed by the idea. The teacher who lights up when explaining a concept. The parent who delights in their child's wonder. The athlete who runs not to win races, but because running makes them feel alive. This is pure will to power, unburdened by resentment or the need for validation.
Most people get stuck as the camel. Some break through to the lion and spend their lives angry at the world. Very few have the courage to become the child, to look at the wreckage the lion made and say, now I will build something new. The path to the child is blocked by a massive psychological barrier. Nietzsche knew that even if you unleash your will to power, you will inevitably face suffering, failure, and the darker parts of your own nature. If you do not integrate these, they will destroy you. This brings us to the concept of the shadow. While Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who would later take Nietzsche's insights into the unconscious and build an entire psychological framework around them, expanded on this concept, the seeds are in Nietzsche. Nietzsche warned that if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. We all have a shadow, the repressed, darker elements of our personality. The aggression we're told is inappropriate, the envy we're ashamed to admit, the selfishness we hide behind altruism, the capacity for cruelty that we pretend doesn't exist, the sexual desires that don't fit our moral image, the rage we swallow down, the resentment we smile through. The camel tries to pretend these don't exist. I'm a good person. I would never hurt anyone. I don't have dark thoughts. This is denial. The last man drugs them away. Anti-anxiety medication, alcohol, endless entertainment, anything to avoid confronting the darkness within. But Nietzsche and Jung tell us that you cannot become whole, you cannot become the Übermensch without integrating this darkness. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. You must accept that you are capable of terrible things. You must accept that you have a drive for dominance, for violence, for revenge. You must accept that under the right circumstances, you could become the villain in someone else's story. Now, let me be clear, acknowledging these impulses is not the same as acting on them. This is not permission to indulge your worst instincts. Integration means you recognize these forces exist within you, you understand them, and you channel them constructively. If you're struggling with this shadow work, this is territory where a trained therapist can help. Don't try to excavate your deepest darkness alone. This is serious psychological work that can destabilize you if you're not prepared. But here's what happens if you repress the shadow. It comes out sideways. It manifests as passive aggression, as resentment, as projection, seeing in others the darkness you refuse to see in yourself, as what Nietzsche calls the tarantula seeking revenge under the guise of justice. Think about the morally righteous person who is secretly vicious, the religious leader who preaches love while harboring hatred, the social justice activist who bullies anyone who disagrees, the peaceful person who is seething with barely contained rage. These are people who have repressed their shadow so completely that it has taken over. They think they're being good, but they're being cruel. They think they're pursuing justice, but they're pursuing revenge. They think they're moral, but they're compensating for inner corruption. Nietzsche despised those who claimed to be good simply because they were too weak to be bad. He called this slave morality, and here we need to understand one of his most controversial ideas. Nietzsche distinguished between two types of morality. This is complex and often misunderstood, so pay close attention. Master morality emerged from the powerful, the noble, the aristocratic classes in ancient societies. They created values based on what enhanced their power and excellence. They said, good means strong, beautiful, noble, proud, healthy, joyful. Bad means weak, ugly, common, timid, sick, miserable. Notice, bad is not evil. It's just the opposite of good. It's contemptible, but it's not morally wicked. The master doesn't hate the weak, he simply looks down on them as inferior. Slave morality, according to Nietzsche, emerged from the powerless, the oppressed, the slave classes. Unable to defeat the powerful directly, they performed a brilliant psychological maneuver. They inverted the values. They said, the powerful are evil. Their strength is tyranny. Their pride is arrogance. Their joy is sin. We, the weak, are actually good. Our weakness is humility. Our suffering is virtue. Our meekness is blessed. This is the morality of resentment. It doesn't affirm itself, it negates its enemy. It says, I am good because they are evil. Nietzsche saw this happening in Christianity, which elevated suffering, poverty, and weakness as virtues. Blessed are the meek. It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. Turn the other cheek.
Now here's where people misunderstand Nietzsche. He's not saying Christianity is false or that compassion is bad. He's doing a genealogical analysis. He's showing that these values emerged from a specific psychological condition, the condition of powerlessness. The slave says, I am good because I am harmless. Nietzsche says, no, you are harmless because you are weak. If you had power, you would use it. Your morality is just a rationalization of your impotence. True morality requires actual choice. It requires having the capacity for mayhem and the discipline to control it. It requires being dangerous but choosing to be kind. Think about the difference between a child who doesn't hit other children because they're not strong enough versus an adult martial artist who doesn't hit others because they choose not to. The child isn't virtuous, they're just weak. The martial artist is virtuous because they could inflict serious harm but choose not to. This is what Nietzsche means when he says only strength can produce true goodness. Weakness produces the appearance of goodness out of necessity, not choice. Let me give you a concrete historical example that illustrates this perfectly. In 1911, Ernest Shackleton placed an advertisement in a London newspaper. It read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in event of success." 5,000 men applied. 5,000 people read that advertisement promising suffering, danger, and possible death, and their response was yes, that's exactly what I want. Why? Because they understood something the last man cannot comprehend. They understood that comfort is not the goal of life. Growth is. Challenge is. Testing yourself against the harshest conditions nature can provide and discovering what you're made of. That's the goal. When Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, was crushed by ice in the Antarctic, the crew was stranded on ice floes for months. They had to survive in the most hostile environment on Earth, with limited supplies and no hope of rescue. And here's what's remarkable. Not a single man died during that ordeal. Not one. Shackleton kept his crew alive through sheer force of will, through leadership, through the will to power manifesting as responsibility for others. Years later, the survivors would say those were the most alive they ever felt. The most miserable conditions of their lives were also the most meaningful. The most dangerous time was also the most purposeful. That is the will to power in action. That is what Nietzsche means when he says happiness is the overcoming of resistance. Compare that to the modern person who is miserable despite living in climate-controlled comfort, with food delivered to their door and unlimited entertainment at their fingertips. They have everything the Shackleton crew lacked, and yet they're depressed, anxious, and feel like their life has no meaning. Why? Because they've removed all resistance. They've optimized for comfort, and in doing so, they've optimized away their humanity. You must confront the dragon of your own resentment. Resentment is the poison of the soul. It is the ill will toward time itself, the anger that the past cannot be changed. How many of us are held back because we are angry at what happened to us 10 years ago? We're angry at our parents for not giving us the childhood we needed. We're angry at our ex-partners for wasting our time. We're angry at the company that fired us. We're angry at our friend who betrayed us. We're angry at our own younger self for making mistakes. We replay the injustices on an endless loop. We fantasize about revenge. We imagine alternate timelines where things went differently. We pour our energy into the unchangeable past instead of the malleable future. Nietzsche saw this as the fundamental sickness of the human condition. We are the only animal that can resent existence itself. We are the only creature that can rage against the fact that time moves in one direction, that the past is fixed, that we cannot undo what has been done.
This resentment is what keeps you stuck in the camel or lion phase. The camel resents the burden but keeps carrying it. The lion resents the dragon but is defined by fighting it. Both are trapped in the past. To become the child, you must break the chains of resentment. And Nietzsche offers the most brutal test ever devised to accomplish this. He calls it the eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon crept into your loneliest loneliness and said to you, "This life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every thought, every sigh, and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. The eternal hourglass of existence is turned over again and again, and you with it, you speck of dust. The same childhood trauma, the same teenage embarrassments, the same failed relationship, the same career setback, the same health crisis, the same boring Tuesday afternoon where nothing happened, the same moment of heartbreak, the same moment of joy, all of it, again, forever. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon? Or would you answer, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? This is the heaviest weight. It forces you to look at your life, not just the successes, but the failures, the traumas, the regrets, the boring Tuesdays, and ask, would I do this again, forever? If the answer is no, you are not free. You are still resenting your life. You are still hoping for a better future to redeem a bad past. You are still living for some imagined tomorrow where everything will finally be okay. The will to power demands that you embrace reality so completely that you would choose it to happen exactly as it did, again and again, forever. Now, some scholars debate whether Nietzsche meant this literally, whether he actually believed in a cyclical universe where everything repeats.
Some evidence suggests he considered it as a scientific hypothesis, but most agree he intended it primarily as a psychological thought experiment. The point is not whether the eternal recurrence is physically real. The point is, could you accept your life so completely that you would choose it again exactly as it is? This is the ultimate test of amor fati, of the love of fate. This leads to Nietzsche's most beautiful concept, amor fati, the love of fate. Amor fati is not just acceptance. It is not tolerating your life. It is not resignation. It is not gritting your teeth and enduring. It is loving it. Nietzsche wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendaciousness in the face of what is necessary, but love it." This is the ultimate expression of the will to power. It is the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. When you look at your trauma and say, "I accept this," you are merely surviving. You are bearing the burden. You are the camel. When you say, "I love this because it forged me," you are triumphing. You are the child. You have transformed suffering into strength, adversity into advantage, trauma into teacher. Think back to those mindset studies we discussed. Your mindset dictates your biological reality. Amor fati is the ultimate mindset shift. It reframes every disaster as a necessary step in your evolution. It removes the victim mentality entirely. If you lose your job, the last man despairs. "Why did this happen to me? It's not fair. My career is ruined." He becomes bitter, resentful, stuck. The person embodying the will to power says, "Good, I hated that job anyway, but I was too comfortable to leave. Now I am free to build what I was meant to build." This apparent disaster is actually liberation. If you fall ill, the last man curses his luck. "Why me? I don't deserve this." He spirals into depression and victimhood. The person with amor fati uses the pain to deepen his understanding of existence. "This illness has shown me what truly matters. It has burned away the trivial concerns. It has given me clarity I never would have achieved in health. Would I choose to be sick? No. But now that I am, will I waste this experience? Also no." Nietzsche himself lived this. He suffered from blinding migraines that would last for days. He had constant digestive issues and vomiting. His eyesight was failing. He lived in isolation, rejected by the woman he loved, estranged from his family, misunderstood by his contemporaries. And on January 3, 1889, in Turin, Italy, Nietzsche saw a horse being whipped by its owner. He collapsed, threw his arms around the horse's neck, and wept. He never recovered his sanity. He spent the last 11 years of his life in a state of mental collapse, cared for by his mother and sister. This man who preached strength was broken. This philosopher who celebrated the will to power ended up powerless. But here's what matters. He didn't write despite his suffering. He wrote because of it. He used his pain as a lens to see deeper into the human condition than anyone else. He wrote, "I have made my will to health, to life, into my philosophy. Illness itself can be a stimulant to life." And elsewhere, the sick man is a parasite of society. In certain cases, it is indecent to go on living. Harsh words, especially coming from a sick man, but Nietzsche refused to see himself as a victim. He refused to use his illness as an excuse for mediocrity. He transformed his suffering into philosophy that would influence the next century of thought. Now, let me give you the historical context that shows how dangerous Nietzsche's ideas are when corrupted. After Nietzsche's breakdown, his sister Elizabeth took control of his unpublished notes. Elizabeth was married to a prominent anti-Semite and was a Nazi sympathizer before the Nazi Party even formally existed. She edited Nietzsche's notebooks. She rearranged his fragments. She fabricated passages. She deleted things that contradicted her agenda. She created a compilation called The Will to Power that Nietzsche never wrote as a coherent book. She turned her brother's philosophy of self-overcoming into a justification for fascism and anti-Semitism. She presented him to Hitler. She made Nietzsche the house philosopher of the Third Reich. This is the opposite of what Nietzsche believed. Nietzsche despised anti-Semitism. He called it the mark of failed, envious souls. He despised nationalism, calling it a disease and a curse. He despised the herd mentality, the mass movements, the appeal to racial superiority, everything that would become Nazism. He broke with his mentor, Wagner, partly because of Wagner's anti-Semitism. He broke with his own sister over her racist husband. In his letters, he wrote, "I am having all anti-Semites shot." His sister's betrayal shows us how ideas can be weaponized, how philosophy can be corrupted, how the will to power, which is about conquering yourself, can be twisted into a justification for dominating others. This is why understanding the real Nietzsche matters. This is why we must be precise about what the will to power actually means. This is why I have been so careful to emphasize that this philosophy is about conquering yourself.
The path of the Übermensch is not about dominating others. It is about conquering yourself. It is the person who has integrated their shadow, who has moved from the camel to the lion to the child, and who looks at the chaos of existence and says yes. We are bridges, Nietzsche says. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss. Think about that image. You are suspended between what you were and what you could become. Below you is the abyss, nihilism, despair, the last man. Ahead of you is the possibility of the Übermensch. It is a dangerous crossing. You can fall into the abyss. You can turn back to the safety of the animal, to pure instinct and comfort. You can stand trembling in the middle, paralyzed by fear and indecision. But the only way to justify your existence, the only way to live authentically, is to cross, to keep moving forward despite the terror, to keep evolving despite the difficulty. To seek power is not to seek tyranny over others. It is to seek the power to be responsible for your own life. It is the refusal to outsource your morality to the crowd, your happiness to circumstances, your worth to others' opinions. It is the courage to stand alone, to create your own values, to walk your own path. As Nietzsche says through Zarathustra, "I now go alone, my disciples. You too go now alone. Thus I want it. Depart from me and guard yourselves against Zarathustra, and better still, be ashamed of him. Perhaps he deceived you." One repays a teacher badly if one always remains nothing but a pupil. He doesn't want followers. He doesn't want disciples who memorize his words and repeat them mindlessly. He wants you to follow yourself. He wants you to take what serves you and reject what doesn't. He wants you to construct your own map of reality. This is the ultimate paradox. The teaching is to reject all teachings, including this one. The path is to forge your own path. The answer is to question all answers. So we return to where we started. The world is full of people striving, fighting, and struggling. But you now possess the secret that most of them miss. You know that the discomfort you feel is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that your will to power is active. It is your soul demanding growth. It is life expressing itself through you. You know that the safe path of the last man leads to a slow, suffocating spiritual death. That comfort without challenge is not happiness, it's decay dressed up as contentment. You know that you must carry the load like the camel. You must develop discipline, skill, and knowledge. You cannot skip this stage. You know that you must roar like the lion. You must reject imposed values and fight for your freedom. You must destroy the dragon of thou shalt.
And you know that you must create like the child. You must find joy in the process itself, unencumbered by resentment or the need for external validation. You have the tools. You understand that your mindset shapes your biology, that your interpretation of stress and challenge literally changes how your cells respond. You understand that your shadow must be integrated, not hidden, that denying your darkness only gives it power over you, that true virtue requires the capacity for vice. And you understand that the ultimate test is to look at your life, every scar, every mistake, every regret, every triumph, and say, I would do it all again. The potential within you is infinite, but it is not guaranteed. It is not your birthright. It is not something that will just happen to you if you wait long enough.
It demands a sacrifice. You must sacrifice who you are today for who you could become tomorrow. You must sacrifice comfort for growth. You must sacrifice certainty for possibility. You must sacrifice the approval of others for the integrity of yourself. Nietzsche asks us, must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? Think about what he's saying. We killed God. We removed the ultimate authority, the supreme lawgiver, the divine parent watching over us. In doing so, we took on a terrible burden. We must now do for ourselves what we once relied on God to do. We must create our own meaning. We must define our own values. We must generate our own purpose. We must become the authority in our own lives. This is terrifying. It's much easier to follow a divine commandment than to create your own moral code. It's much easier to rely on revealed truth than to forge your own understanding through struggle and error. But it's also liberating. You are no longer bound by dogma. You are no longer constrained by what tradition says you should be. You are free to experiment, to explore, to create yourself anew. The answer is yes. We must become the masters of our own fate. We must become gods of our own existence, not in the sense of having supernatural powers, but in the sense of taking ultimate responsibility for who we are and what we create. This is the meaning of the Ubermensch. Not a superhuman in the physical sense, but someone who has overcome the human tendency toward resentment, toward cowardice, toward conformity. Someone who says yes to life despite its suffering. Someone who creates value rather than merely receiving it. Someone who takes responsibility rather than playing the victim. You can be that person, not by being perfect, not by never struggling, but by transforming your struggles into strength, by metabolizing your pain into power, by loving your fate so completely that you would choose it again. But let's bring this down from the philosophical stratosphere to your actual life. Let's talk about what this looks like on Monday morning when your alarm goes off and you have to face another week. Here are 5 practices rooted in Nietzschean philosophy that you can implement immediately. First, the morning question. Before you check your phone, before you scroll social media, before you consume anything, ask yourself, if I had to live this exact day again for eternity, what would I need to change right now? This is eternal recurrence as a daily practice. It forces you to take radical responsibility for how you spend your hours. That job you hate, you're choosing to go there today. That relationship that drains you, you're choosing to stay in it. Those habits that are slowly killing you, you're choosing them. The eternal recurrence strips away all your excuses. You can't blame circumstance or bad luck or other people. You have to look at your life and acknowledge, this is what I'm choosing. This is what I'm creating. And if you wouldn't choose this day to repeat forever, then change it. Not someday, not when circumstances are perfect. Today, now. Because you're living the day you'll live 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, forever. Make it a day worth repeating. Second, the resistance practice. Each day, deliberately choose something difficult, something that makes you uncomfortable, something that requires you to overcome resistance.
This is training the will to power like you would train a muscle. If you only do what's easy, you atrophy. You become weaker, softer, more vulnerable. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Take a cold shower. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Work on the creative project that terrifies you. Speak up in the meeting when you'd rather stay quiet. Go to the gym when you'd rather stay home. The specific activity matters less than the practice of choosing difficulty over comfort. You're training yourself to lean into resistance rather than flee from it. And here's what you'll discover. The resistance is always worse in your mind than in reality. The anticipation of discomfort is more painful than the actual discomfort. Once you're in the cold shower, once you're having the hard conversation, once you're doing the workout, it's never as bad as your mind made it out to be. You're not just building physical or practical capabilities, you're rewiring your relationship with difficulty itself. You're teaching your nervous system that challenge is not threat, it's opportunity. Third, the shadow journaling. Once a week, write down the thoughts and impulses you're ashamed of, the jealousy you felt when your friend succeeded, the satisfaction you felt when your rival failed, the aggressive fantasy you had, the selfish desire you're hiding. Don't censor yourself, don't judge what comes up, just observe it and write it down. This is Jung's shadow work translated into practice. You're bringing the darkness into consciousness. You're acknowledging that you're capable of pettiness, cruelty, and selfishness. And paradoxically, this makes you less likely to act on these impulses. When you repress the shadow, it gains power over you. It comes out sideways in passive-aggressive comments, in self-sabotage, in projection onto others. But when you acknowledge it, when you look at it directly, you integrate it. You can say, yes, part of me felt jealous, that's human, that's normal, and I can feel that jealousy and still choose to be happy for my friend. I can acknowledge the selfish desire and still choose generosity. You become whole. You become honest with yourself. And from that honesty comes real power, the power to choose your actions consciously rather than being driven by unconscious forces. Fourth, the lion's roar. Identify one thou shalt in your life, one rule or expectation you're following that isn't yours, something you're doing because it's what you're supposed to do, not because it aligns with your values. This could be career-related. I should stay in this stable job even though I hate it. It could be relationship-related. I should get married because that's what people my age do. It could be lifestyle-related. I should live in this city because that's where the opportunities are. Once you've identified it, consciously violate it. Not recklessly, not destructively, but deliberately. If you've been staying in a job that crushes your soul because it's the responsible thing to do, start taking steps towards something else. Update your resume. Take a class in a field you're passionate about. Have conversations with people doing work you admire. If you've been maintaining a relationship out of obligation rather than love, have an honest conversation. It might end the relationship, or it might transform it into something authentic. Either way, you're choosing truth over comfort. This is the lion phase in microcosm. You're practicing the sacred no. You're reclaiming your sovereignty. You're distinguishing between the values that were imposed on you and the values that are actually yours. Fifth, amor fati reframing. At the end of each day, identify the worst thing that happened, the most frustrating, disappointing, or painful moment. Then ask yourself, how could this be exactly what I needed? What strength might this difficulty be building in me? What lesson might this contain? How could this apparent setback actually be setting me up for something better? This is not toxic positivity. This is not denying that bad things are bad. It's training yourself to extract value from everything that happens to you. Maybe you got rejected from a job. How could that be good? Maybe that company would have limited your growth. Maybe this rejection is pushing you towards something better. Maybe you needed this lesson in resilience. Maybe you had a conflict with someone you care about. How could that be good? Maybe this conflict is revealing a misalignment that needed to be addressed. Maybe it's teaching you how to communicate more clearly. Maybe it's strengthening the relationship by working through difficulty rather than avoiding it. The practice isn't to convince yourself that bad things are actually good. The practice is to become someone who can find the gift in anything. To become anti-fragile, someone who actually grows stronger through adversity. These 5 practices won't make you the Ubermensch overnight, but they will start rewiring your psychology. They will train the will to power. They will help you move from the camel to the lion to the child. And you'll notice something interesting. The more you do these practices, the less you'll feel like you have to do them. They'll stop being disciplines you force yourself through and start being expressions of who you're becoming. That's when you know you're embodying the philosophy rather than just understanding it intellectually. That's when you know you're becoming the Ubermensch.
This is not a job. This is a slow suicide. Every day I stay here, I'm choosing comfort over growth, security over authenticity. I'm sacrificing who I could become for the illusion of safety. Here's what you do. You don't quit tomorrow in a dramatic scene. That's not the will to power. That's just impulsive. Instead, you activate the 3 metamorphoses systematically. Be the camel first. While you're still in this job, extract every ounce of value from it. Learn the skills, build the network, save the money. Study how the industry works, master your craft. Don't waste the burden, make it useful. Then become the lion. Start building your escape route. What would you do if you could do anything? Not what would make money or what would make my parents proud. What would make you feel alive? Start experimenting with that on nights and weekends. Build the skills you'll need. Make the connections. Start the side project. Finally, become the child. The transition happens when you're no longer motivated by escape, when you're motivated by creation. When you're not running from the job you hate, but running toward the work you love. When you're not saying no to corporate life, but saying yes to your authentic calling. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. The person who quits their job out of resentment usually fails. They're the lion without having been the camel first. No skills, no discipline, no plan. Or they're the lion who never becomes the child. They build a business they hate just as much as the job they left. But the person who works through all 3 metamorphoses, they succeed. Because by the time they leave, they're not leaving from weakness, they're leaving from strength. They're not fleeing, they're advancing. Struggle 2. Relationships that have become comfortable but dead. You've been with your partner for 5, 10, 15 years. You don't fight, you're compatible on paper, but there's no passion, no growth, no vitality. You're roommates who occasionally have obligatory sex. You love them, but you're not in love with them. The last man's response: all long-term relationships lose passion. That's just how it works. We have stability, shared history, convenience. That's what matters. The will to power response: we've stopped growing together. We've stopped challenging each other. We're both atrophying. This isn't love, it's mutual decay dressed up as commitment. Here's the brutal truth. Most relationships die not from dramatic betrayals, but from comfort, from the slow erosion of challenge, of mystery, of striving together towards something greater than yourselves. Nietzsche would say, a healthy relationship is 2 people pushing each other toward their highest potential. It's not comfortable, it's demanding. Each person should be calling the other to become more than they are. So what do? You have the conversation, the real conversation. I love you, but I'm afraid we're dying together. I'm afraid we've chosen safety over growth. I want us to be partners in becoming, not partners in stagnation. This conversation is terrifying. It might end the relationship. But here's the thing. The relationship is already ending. It's just ending slowly, quietly, through 1,000 small compromises and unspoken resentments. Better to face it directly. Better to say, let's either recommit to growing together or admit that we've grown apart. Better to be the lion who roars than the camel who carries the dead weight until you both collapse. And if you choose to recommit, commit to the struggle. Not the struggle against each other, the struggle together. Find something you're both growing toward, a mission,
a business, a creative project, a cause, something that demands you both become more than you are. Because that's what the will to power looks like in relationship, two people becoming stronger together than either could alone. Struggle 3. The weight of past trauma. Something terrible happened to you. Abuse, betrayal, loss, violence. It was years ago, maybe decades, but it still controls your life. You're angry at the person who hurt you. You're angry at yourself for not being over it. You're trapped in the past. The last man's response: I'm a victim. What happened to me was unfair. I deserve sympathy. The world owes me something because of what I endured. The will to power response: what happened to me was terrible, and I will not let it be meaningless. I will transform this trauma into strength. I will use this pain as fuel to become someone who can protect others from similar suffering.
This is amor fati at its most challenging. Can you look at the worst thing that ever happened to you and find a way to say, I love this fate because it forged me? This doesn't mean the abuse was okay. This doesn't mean the trauma was deserved. This doesn't mean you have to forgive the person who hurt you. It means you refuse to let what happened to you be the defining feature of your life. You refuse to let the person who hurt you continue to have power over you decades later. You refuse to give them the satisfaction of breaking you. The practice is this. Every time you feel the resentment rising, ask yourself, what strength did this experience give me? What do I understand now that I couldn't understand before? Who can I help now because I went through this? Maybe it made you more empathetic. Maybe it made you more resilient. Maybe it made you unwilling to tolerate injustice when you see it happening to others. Maybe it gave you the fire that drives you to create, to build, to prove that you're more than what was done to you. This is the alchemical transformation Nietzsche demands. Lead into gold, trauma into power, victor into victor. Struggle 4. The paralysis of meaninglessness. You've achieved what you were supposed to achieve. You got the degree, the job, the house, the family, and now you're looking at it all and feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no sense of accomplishment, just the hollow realization that you climbed a mountain only to discover it wasn't the mountain you wanted to climb. The last man's response: this is it. This is life. Work, family, retirement, death. Stop being so dramatic. Stop wanting more. Be grateful for what you have. The will to power response: I've been living someone else's values. I've been pursuing someone else's dream. I need to create my own values. I need to find my own mountain. This is the problem Nietzsche saw everywhere. We've killed God, but we haven't created anything to replace the meaning God provided. So we fill the void with consumerism, with careerism, with the pursuit of comfort and status. But none of it satisfies because we're pursuing externally defined goals. We're trying to earn meaning from outside ourselves instead of creating it from within. The solution is terrifying. You have to become your own God. You have to define your own values. You have to create your own meaning. Start by asking the eternal recurrence question. If you had to live your exact life on infinite repeat, what would you need to change for that to be bearable? Not what would make other people approve of you, but what would make you approve of yourself. Maybe you realize you don't actually care about the big house and the fancy car. Maybe you realize you'd trade all of it for more time with your kids, or more time creating art, or more time in service of something you believe in. The challenge is, you can't just know this intellectually. You have to act on it. You have to actually change your life to align with your authentic values. And that might mean disappointing people. It might mean losing status. It might mean starting over. But the alternative is continuing to live a life that feels hollow. And that's not living. That's just existing. Struggle 5. the fear of your own potential. This is the most insidious one. You know what you're capable of. You know you could achieve more, create more, become more, but you're afraid. Afraid of failure, yes, but more than that, afraid of success, afraid of what it would demand of you, afraid of the responsibility. The last man's response? Who am I to think I can be great? That's arrogant, that's narcissistic. I should stay humble, I should stay small, it's safer here. The will to power response? My potential is not arrogance, it's responsibility. I have gifts, and it's my duty to develop them. It's my duty to become everything I'm capable of becoming. Nietzsche has a quote for this. What is the ape to man? A laughingstock or a painful embarrassment, and man shall just be that for the overman, a laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. What he means is we're meant to transcend ourselves. We're meant to become more than we are. And when we look back at who we were, we should feel a little embarrassed, not because we were bad, but because we were so much less than we could have been. The fear of your own potential is the fear of responsibility. Because if you admit you could be great, you can no longer make excuses for being mediocre. If you admit you could write the book, start the company, make the art, lead the movement, then you have to actually do it. The practice is simple but brutal. Stop making excuses. Stop saying, I could do that if. Just do it. Stop saying someday when, someday today. Start before you're ready. Start before you feel qualified. Start before you have permission, because you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel qualified, and you don't need permission. You need to embrace what Nietzsche calls the pathos of distance, the gap between who you are and who you could become. That gap isn't a source of shame, it's a source of energy. It's the tension that pulls you forward. Now let me address the elephant in the room. Some of you are thinking, this all sounds great, but what about people who are actually oppressed? What about people facing real systemic barriers? Isn't this just privilege talking? This is a fair question, and it's where Nietzsche gets misunderstood, sometimes deliberately, sometimes accidentally. Nietzsche is not saying that everyone starts from the same place. He's not denying that some people face greater obstacles than others. He's not claiming that privilege doesn't exist. What he is saying is, regardless of your circumstances, you have a choice in how you respond to them. You can be a victim of your circumstances, or you can be a warrior against them. Think about Frederick Douglass, born into slavery, one of the most oppressive systems in human history. Did he accept his circumstances as immutable? Did he say, well, I'm a slave, so there's nothing I can do? No. He taught himself to read in defiance of laws forbidding it. He escaped. He became one of the most powerful orators and writers of his era. He didn't just survive his oppression, he transformed it into a mission to destroy that oppression for others.
Think about Malala Yousafzai, shot in the head by the Taliban for the crime of wanting an education. Did she let that trauma defeat her? Did she say, I'm a victim and the world should feel sorry for me? No, she recovered and became one of the most powerful advocates for education rights in the world. These are not people who had privilege. These are people who faced brutal, systemic oppression, and they embodied the will to power. They refused to be defined by what was done to them. They refused to let their circumstances limit their potential. This is what Nietzsche means when he talks about power. Not the power to oppress others, but the power to overcome your own obstacles. Not the privilege of starting ahead, but the strength to keep moving forward regardless of where you start. Yes, acknowledge the obstacles. Yes, fight for a more just world. Yes, work to dismantle oppressive systems. But don't use those obstacles as an excuse to not become everything you're capable of becoming. Because that's not justice, that's self-defeat disguised as political awareness. So, here's where we are.
You've learned the philosophy, you understand the three Metamorphoses, you know about the shadow, about amor fati, about the will to power. But understanding is not enough. Nietzsche would despise you if you just nod along and do nothing. He would despise you if you become a collector of ideas who never acts on them. The will to power demands action. It demands that you test these ideas against reality. It demands that you take the risk, face the fear, make the change. So I'm going to end with a challenge, not a suggestion, a challenge. Within the next 24 hours, identify one thou shalt in your life. One rule, one expectation, one burden that you're carrying that isn't yours, and violate it. Not recklessly, not destructively, but deliberately. If you've been staying silent in meetings because you're afraid of judgment, speak up. If you've been avoiding a difficult conversation because it's uncomfortable, have it. If you've been postponing your creative work because it's scary, start it. If you've been tolerating a toxic relationship because you're afraid of being alone, end it. If you've been living in a city you hate because it's where the jobs are, start planning your exit. Do one thing in the next 24 hours that the last man would never do. Do one thing that requires you to overcome resistance. Do one thing that scares you. Because that's how you start. Not by becoming the Ubermensch overnight, but by taking one step toward it, and then another, and then another. And as you take these steps, remember this: Nietzsche himself was the embodiment of his philosophy. His life was the proof of his ideas.
He was born sickly. He suffered from migraines so severe that he would be bedridden for days, unable to see, unable to think, vomiting continuously. His eyesight deteriorated throughout his life until he was nearly blind. He had chronic digestive issues that made eating a daily struggle. By conventional metrics, Nietzsche should have been a last man. He should have sought comfort, avoided stress, minimalized to suffering. He had every excuse to live a quiet, unambitious life focused on managing his illness. Instead, he hiked alone through the Swiss Alps, carrying a notebook, composing some of the most radical philosophy ever written. He spent winters in the south of France and Italy, summers in the mountains, always moving, always thinking, always writing. He lived in cheap boarding houses. He had almost no money. He published book after book that almost nobody read during his lifetime. His first book, The Birth of Tragedy, was savaged by academic reviewers. His later books sold in the dozens, not thousands. He was rejected by the woman he loved. He was estranged from his family. He lost his closest friends. He spent the last decade of his productive life largely alone, wandering from town to town, unknown and unappreciated. And yet he wrote, "I have made my will to health, to life, into my philosophy." He chose to see his suffering not as a curse, but as a refinement. His illness forced him to think differently, to question everything, to develop a philosophy that could sustain him when comfort was impossible. His isolation freed him from the pressure to conform. His poverty freed him from the corrupting influence of wealth and status. His sickness forced him to discover what it really means to be strong. In a letter to a friend, he wrote, "As far as my long sickness is concerned, do I not owe much more to it than I owe to my health? I owe it a higher health. What does not kill me makes me stronger." This wasn't theoretical for Nietzsche. This was how he survived. This was how he transformed years of suffering into ideas that would reshape Western thought. And then came the collapse. On January 3rd, 1889, in Turin, Nietzsche saw a horse being whipped by its owner. Something broke. He collapsed, embraced the horse, and wept. He never recovered his sanity. Some scholars think it was syphilis, others think it was a brain tumor. Others think it was the accumulated stress of years of illness and loneliness finally overwhelming his mind. For the next 11 years, until his death in 1900, Nietzsche lived in a state of mental collapse. He couldn't write, he couldn't recognize people, he regressed to a childlike state. His mother cared for him until she died, then his sister took over. The man who wrote about strength ended up weak. The man who wrote about the will to power ended up powerless. The man who wrote "That which does not kill me makes me stronger"
was killed by his own mind. Is this a tragedy? Is this proof that his philosophy failed? No, it's proof that he was human. It's proof that he faced the same vulnerabilities we all face. It's proof that the Übermensch is not invulnerable. It's someone who embraces their vulnerability and grows through it. Nietzsche didn't need to live to be 90 and die peacefully in his sleep to validate his philosophy. He lived his philosophy. He transformed his suffering into something beautiful. He created meaning in a meaningless universe. He said yes to life, even when life was brutal. And after his death, his ideas spread. His books began to sell. His influence grew. Today, over a century later, millions of people around the world are reading his words, being challenged by his ideas, being transformed by his philosophy. He didn't know this would happen. He wrote for an audience that didn't exist yet. He wrote for you, for the person in the 21st century who feels stuck, lost, searching for meaning in a world that seems to have none. He wrote, "Some men are born posthumously." He knew that his time would come, even if it wasn't in his lifetime. That is amor fati. That is the will to power. That is creating value in the face of a universe that doesn't care, for an audience that doesn't exist yet, because the creation itself is the justification. So, when you feel like quitting, when the resistance seems too great, when the suffering seems meaningless, remember Nietzsche. Half-blind, in constant pain, alone in a boarding house, writing philosophy that almost nobody was reading, transformed by illness, creating despite everything. If he could do that, what's your excuse? If he could find meaning in his suffering, can't you find meaning in yours? If he could create his own values in a godless universe, can't you create yours? If he could become the Übermensch, despite every disadvantage, despite every obstacle, despite illness and poverty and loneliness, can't you? This journey doesn't end here. Understanding the will to power is just the first step. To truly integrate your shadow and understand the depths of your psychology, you need to understand the man who took Nietzsche's torch and carried it into the unconscious, Carl Jung. Click the video on screen right now to explore Becoming Your True Self with Carl Jung. It is the perfect complement to what we've covered today. Jung gives you the psychological tools to actually do the shadow work Nietzsche demands. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you're missing the rest of this philosophy series where we're building a complete framework for self-mastery. We're exploring the ideas that can transform your life, from Stoicism to Existentialism, from ancient wisdom to cutting-edge psychology. Hit that subscribe button. Join this community of people who refuse to be the last man, who choose growth over comfort, who transform suffering into strength. The last man blinks and says, "We have invented happiness." You are not the last man. You are the bridge. You are the rope stretched across the abyss. You are becoming the Übermensch. Now go, live your philosophy. Test these ideas against reality. Take what serves you and discard what doesn't. And remember Nietzsche's final command. Guard yourself against all teachings, including this one. Follow yourself. Become who you are. Now go, become the Übermensch.